Hi. All right. It is me once again. Oh my gosh, now I know exactly what I'm doing here. Well, I mean, I know what I'm doing wrong. Hi. So I decided that I'd come on again today to record another section because I'm going to be traveling for the next few days, and I don't know, it's probably unlikely that I'm going to do these while I'm away. But have no fear, Luke is going to be under the best possible care. He has Rachel coming here to come take care of him, and I think he's going to really enjoy that. So, anyway, so maybe I'll get another one or two in tomorrow before I head out. But anyway, so here we go. So the section that we're up to right now is mastery in the third hub. And there's a bunch of there's like two things I was thinking about as I was kind of like cruising into doing this and preparing the thumbnail and just sort of thinking. And oddly enough, like there's two things. One is about the fact that there is probably about between this is gonna sound like a lot because it is like between 20 and 50 books that I would consider like really core to Parinama. And those are books I read multiple times when I was doing in the process of writing the book. And there's like, I think like definitely over 300 books that I read total, and and many more scientific journal articles and interviews and all of that stuff went into the book. But the section mastery right now is when we're getting into one of the core books. And so now that my technical um capacity for these is improving, I want to show you here, which is this book, Stephen Pink Drive, is um is it really influenced a lot of sections in the for the this third hub, especially this one. And so I just want to recommend this book. And even if you watch a YouTube summary of it, Daniel Pink, right, I like his books. This is really the only one that I've really sunk my teeth into. And the central premise is really about debunking the notion that human beings need to be like driven by discipline and force, which was like really worked with seeing that the research around work and even just human dignity it really supports the notion that like people want to work, like people want to produce and contribute things, but under very specific criteria. And it's interesting because I mean we get into it throughout the book, but the three criteria as outlined by Stephen Pink in the book is that people want to have autonomy, so being given very little control, very little trust, being really squeezed into kind of like a compartmentalized, repetitive task with no ability to provide inputs and influence your work environment. That is like number one. So autonomy. So the flip side of that is being able to be involved with like how you operate and work and be trusted and be allowed to make decisions. So when there's a lot of bureaucracy, like all the decisions are kind of either already made or they're made, number of levels above you. So that's one of the things. The second thing is mastery, and which we're going to read about here, and that is that people want to get good at doing things, and that is human nature. Like we enjoy building skills, in a way, and most of the time it's in a way that's kind of like, incremental enough that it's not like disruptive and we don't have to like stare our incompetence too hard in the face. But and the third is purpose. And so purpose means that you feel that your work aligns with something that matters to you. That it's meaningful to your sense of what is important in the world, and that can be varied. But for the book here, I just want to pop it back up, the cover here. This is a book that you can get on like eBay for like $4. And as a life hack, one of the things I want to offer for anybody who is like into reading paper books or even just having paper books as a resource, because sometimes you're listening to it on an Audible and you're like, "Ah, I kind of would really like to have this," is eBay. eBay sells, there's a lot of resellers. You can get books for like $4 and it's free shipping. Another hack on reading is your local library. In Boston, we have, it's the service called, it used to be Overdrive, now it's called Libby, but that there's a that you can just listen to free audiobooks, and they're like the most, modern, there's like the most recent, but they're free. And when so everything isn't on there, and sometimes it's a wait. So I also, buy books on Audible, but those are two hacks. And also using your library. I mean, 300 books, not only thinking about the cost of purchasing books at that scale. I mean, 'cause it's a lot of books. It's like it was like it really was like when it was happening, it was like consuming a lot of just sort of even like space. Is like, how would you store them, and then how would you like or get rid of them and all this kind of stuff? Because it is a weird thing when you have a book and you're kind of like, yeah, I don't really want to. Like, sometimes, like, you don't really know what to do with it, or it's like, do I throw it away? Do I recycle it? I don't know. So anyway, unexpected little detour here, but I'm gonna read here out of Mastery, and as is normal, it's very likely that what's gonna happen is that everything I just said is gonna be repeated here. But but actually that brings to mind that the second thought I had was not only like the Parinama canon, which is like what are the like 20 to 50 key books that really informed like the framing of this. But there's also one of the things I'm noticing in reading this chapter is that I was writing this when I was working really hard in a process that was like kind of in a very even though it was like incredibly demanding, it was also like within like kind of a controlled environment. And so now that I'm working on building out Parinama in the world, there's some different dynamics in it. And so I've been comparing those as they come up. Failure, that section was one where I was like, feels a little different right now. But anyway, I'm gonna read and then I'll stop. I mean, I don't know how useful it is to go on a 8-minute tangent about where to buy used books. But anyway, mastery. Anyhow, mastery comes from working through and triumphing. Why does that sound weird? So mastery comes from working through and triumphing over limitations. Meaningful accomplishment is achieved through doing the work that forms us into the person capable of doing it. We don't begin the process being everything we'll need to be. To build skill, to pursue mastery, you need to be challenged. And by facing the challenge, you will be challenged. You'll be changed. Wow, there's some high. I think it's like vision issues right now, so bear with me. So I'm going to reread that actually. So to build skill, to pursue mastery, you need to be challenged, and by facing that challenge, you will be changed. If we repeat something we already know we're good at, we're just keeping ourselves busy, which from a growth perspective is like running in place. The difference between busyness and flow, both states in which time disappears, is that flow is uplifting and satisfying, and busyness is draining. Busy people are perpetually exhausted and disenfranchised, especially when they don't connect what they're doing with what matters to them. Those who expand their abilities are exhausted but satisfied. Our work ethic and behavior either build or diminish our confidence in ourselves. Yeah. It's really nuanced. Something I've been thinking about, which is like how one of the things about this, about Parinama and about what I'm putting forward with it is that the part of the challenge of it is it's not a spoon feed, and also it really is an individual experience with this content. So it's not like, I think one of the things is, on one hand, it's like it's not being dictated, and so the weakness of that is it's not as easy to follow. But the other part of it is it's more like a cipher where you have to actually decode it and deconstruct it in a way that is uniquely for you. So it's like a cipher that's like built for, 8 billion individual outcomes, which I think anything that's written is probably that. So everybody's perspective. Like them, like this is the book. Um All right, yeah. Enough, oh boy. Okay, sometimes the only option for making the money we need to survive is to work at a soul-sucking job. When this is the case, become clear about who you are and about your long-term plan. Don't let the situation define you. Reminding yourself of this should be done daily. When we know a job isn't developing skills in us that we care about, isn't developing in us, okay. Yeah. When we know a job isn't developing skills in us that we care about, isn't allowing for the dignity of autonomy, or isn't connecting us to a sense of purpose, throwback to Pink, we can choose to show up for ourselves by connecting with how the job helps our short term situation while we build a plan for a better future. This can be really difficult, but worth the effort. Yeah, I wanna kinda make a comment on that, and I think one of the most important things with this is, and these are really, like, as far as the nuance in this, which is that, yes, like, I worked really soul-sucking jobs, and, but, I kind of tend to believe I have a bias in terms of how my brain is wired for being able to have that kind of prefrontal cortex, emphasis, which allows me to delay gratification. So I really think that one of the things, it's just like the lens I want to place on this is one of like non-judgment for people who have a hard time with working a terrible job and not getting absorbed by it. It's a lot harder than like just having like a mantra and an affirmation to be like, hey, this isn't doesn't define you, because it's actually really challenging when you're surrounded by people, 8 hours a day. It's like one of the hardest things is that we really become like absorb part of the people that we spend a lot of time with. So I guess like the edit on this is just giving particular respect to like how easy, how challenging that is, and that could be perceived as being like slightly glib, and because it would be really hard to hold on to. So, but just that it's possible, just that it's a possibility. Yeah, but it's just hard. I mean, it's really grating. I should say I recently had an experience working in a fantastic environment, honestly. It was just really the wrong place for me, and I found that to be really draining, even though it was wonderful. So it's kinda like that was even something where I was like, "Okay, this is interesting." There's it just I guess the mastery there's a mastery problem, The autonomy, okay, yeah, I guess it's a good framework is to be like, "Okay, actually, that's a good framework." Now the here's the 'cause a lot of times when people are struggling with work and being like, "What is" "Should I stay or should I go?" kind of thing, and without having a really practical framework, one of the things like first hub practicalities will like pull on anxiety and scarcity and fear of an uncertain future and like having primary needs met. But if we can like have at least some of that established, it's like considering even just like whether just using it as a framework to be like, okay, am I given like respect and freedom and autonomy here? Am I learning how to do something that's challenging and interesting to me? And is the work that I'm doing aligned with like my purpose? And of course, does it pay great? Is the fourth. Sometimes the fourth, if it's the fourth, I'm adding fourth in. Sometimes that's a problem because that actually can, especially if there's a very practical reality of financial insecurity. That's a kind of do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do, kind of thing, like a la Oprah. Um, But that's a challenging one. It's like when 1 through 3 are not being met and 4 is really strong. It's surprisingly common. I think it's something that, folks who are not in that situation have a hard time imagining. I've had people say, "Oh, do they dry their tears with $100 bills?" kind of thing. And yeah, they do. They do. I've done it. Like, the thing is that it's, once the yeah, I'll just say it's, a thing. Yeah, I'll show you, it's very one of the things that I have a lot of, experience with and exposure and working with people, thousands of people actually, at this point, is with people who are pretty astonished at the reality that they did everything right. They were competitive throughout their lives as academics, as athletes going through college, getting the great grades, getting the great job, getting married, having children, getting the right career, buying the home, achieving financial success, and finding it at any point in that, because I think the thing is there's a stepwise thing with that where it's like, um, at any point there can be that sense of like, wow, achieving this didn't it didn't relieve me of like of the sense that I thought it would, and that's where Parinum is very helpful. We might have a little secret guest here if he shows his face. I hope he does. Hi, kitty. I was watching videos today, and there's one where Luke's hopped up there, and I was just absolutely, like, mesmerized by him. I was watching it off my other Gmail account, and I made a comment on it to myself. Right, kitty? He's very cute. Okay, I'm gonna read. So, when we're pursuing mastery, the good, hard, intense, focused, and aligned work of our lives is deeply fulfilling. We want rest, but once we're rested, we want to get back at it. Rest after completing challenging work feels fantastic. Struggle and rest together build strength. When we exercise, we push our muscles. When we rest, they repair. That's when increased strength gets created. Some parents and leaders try to eliminate struggle, and others can cause harm by pushing too hard. Some get it just right. They support and develop self-empowerment in their children. Good parents, coaches, and leaders allow struggle while holding a safe space for rest and support when it's needed. It's hard to watch someone struggle without stepping in. Observe your own inclination to interfere with and manage a child as it struggles. Then watch its frustration if you take over before it's finished trying. Sometimes a task is too challenging and a child needs help, but if it's empowered, when it's ready, the child will ask to receive it. Alternately, look at his little head in the background. I hope he. Oh. Sorry, it's very distracting. Sorry. Sometimes a task is too challenging and a child needs help, but if it's empowered, when it's ready, the child will ask to receive it. Alternately, if a child keeps having the challenge snatched away, it becomes dependent and less likely to try. Watching talented, experienced people do difficult things can be inspiring, but to make a skill our own, we need to try and struggle with it to learn. If we allow struggle within safe parameters for our children and the people we lead, they have the opportunity to grow. If we do the work for them, we rob them of their growth. Well, you know what? It's really interesting that I said so much about child rearing, and then finally there was a tell in the end of the people we lead. Is that I will, reading this, and it's the first time I've read this actually for quite a while. Is that um, I think that some of these, like the failure section, this mastery section is a little bit disjointed. It's kind of like, it's sort of like a aggregation of a bunch of thoughts that are like slightly related on the topic. And yeah, and it's very like, I guess, biographical because it's like I'm reading it and I know exactly what I was, because there's still a lot of me in that. And that might be when they're still kind of disjointed, because when I can read it and I see what I was actually working on, which actually happens not a lot, because it's not it doesn't have that biography. And that was one of the things in the versioning of the book that got slowly worked through, is to kind of push it through so that it actually had that kind of cohesion with, that kind of like grew beyond me. And so with that, I will tell that, I will say that what I was dealing with was reconciling being like a snowplow helicopter boss. And that when I was thinking about what doing people's hard stuff does, is it robs them of their chance for development. I was reconciling the fact that I had left my leadership team in the company that I had left to write the book. And when I had overseen the group, I removed their obstacles. I fought their battles for them. I did the toughest stuff that they were supposed to do, so that when I left, understandably, there was, for some people, there was a sense of, like, there were hard feelings, and I was working to really unpack that, about, like, how that could be. And I don't know if they necessarily, um, considered it that as this specifically the issue, but I do think that how that plays out is, like, a sense of being abandoned, like abandoned and vulnerable. And that is, exactly for some folks who are less, who are weaker than others, really, in their growth, in terms of the positions that they were in as leaders in my organization, that who are like, that they were, I mean, they were the most vulnerable. And I think that that's something, it's really in there. And and it's interesting now, in hindsight and retrospectively, to think about how the third hub, as it relates to power, um, with a shrinking second hub, as my emotional capacity has grown, my ability to be in the presence of somebody's struggle and discomfort has increased a lot. I mean, even just with, what would I say? Like even like enmeshment or lack of differentiation, that, when even, yeah, I mean, it just shows up even as a leader, is that if people who worked for me were struggling, that I just didn't want them to be struggling. And it wasn't necessarily that I was just such a fantastic human being that, just wants no struggling for people. It was more just that I couldn't actually bear it. I didn't have the capacity for it. So as a result of them, as mentioned here, that you're supposed to do with your children, Yeah, that I was robbing them of their developmental opportunities, and I think that was something I really wrestled with personally, and I guess it sort of made its way through here. But, um, yeah, I mean, one of the things about this book and why the beginner's class has been particularly rewarding for me is that with attendance of a group in kind of a real-time setting, and even with the delay with people who are watching it a little bit later, that one of the things that happens is that there's just more discussion, there's more feedback. People are telling me about and that is something that for this material, this kind of like one-sided thing where I'm kind of like reading something I wrote and then speaking to it, it's pretty one-sided. Like it's me just being it's kind of is almost accidentally establishing a position of authority where I think that like where I stand relative to this content is that I very likely put more work into this than like someone who's reading it or watching this has, but that is not something that puts me in a position of knowing more about the topic as it relates to you. And I think that's a really important differentiation to be like, well, because I have, perhaps have read more on the topic, or contemplated it longer, or have kind of more expansive insights, that would somehow put me in a position to have a greater authority over another person's like personal lived experience with themselves or even yeah, and I think that's really important to keep front and center. And I do think it's one of the things that this dynamic of reading this, you know, like sort of accidentally creates because I do think it's also kind of, it's also difficult to like speak, if you have an opinion about this or you're like, yeah, I don't think that that's true. Like putting something into a comment is like there's like kind of an energetic like barrier to like break through with that. Cause I don't like I have a thing with comments where I'll be like, oh, I really want to say something, I'll write it and then I delete it. Cause I'm like, yeah, I don't want to live by that. Like it's like once it's like written, it feels very like now I have to like now I'm like sort of like it's on the was it transcript or whatever. It's like the core document. It's like, yeah, which is weird. But anyway, I want to encourage hopefully folks to comment or yeah, comment, and you can delete it if you're like, I don't like it. But I love hearing from people. And very specifically, I've loved hearing people tell me things that like, aren't, wouldn't be fall under the category of like agreement or positive, like it's just really interesting. I care more about making this something that is a tool and supports an individual's process than I care about like being right about it or having it be in a structure that is like, you know, mine because it's not mine. This process is yours. And the role I have in it is like this, which is like I'll talk about it and whatever you have to say about it, I'm interested and I value it and it's important, you know. It's important. So I'm gonna ring this bell. This has been killing me. Hmm. This little cat. All right. Okay, I think that is like more than anyone ever's bargained for. Some of these are really rambling. It's just the format, I guess. This is like defined as the format. But once again, I want to really share this fantastic new. And if you have any ideas about stuff that you'd like to see here, it's kind of cool because it also makes me do a little bit more preparation than I had before. And also you'd think the preparation might help me sort of line my thoughts up a bit more. But I think that one of the things that in particular with this section and what happened with the failure is really kind of like recognizing that it has a quality that is like a little bit is like kind of more on the side of being unfinished. Like, so it's kind of like, yeah, some of the sections feel really finished to me. They still kind and for now, I mean, whatever, but um they still resonate. Like, I read them and I'm like, "Oh, this still really has something in it." Like, it's still really well, it happens a lot actually, but this one, it's kinda yeah. Yeah, how would you tell me how could that be improved? What are your thoughts on it? Yeah, there's so many ways. Anyhow, that is good for today. I think that I think we're good on that. Thank you so much. So thank you so much. I really appreciate, of course, Mira. Of course, of course, of course. I mean, please, I'm gonna ring the bell for you. I'm gonna send this. This is for Mira, everybody. All future watchers of this as a as a sound of gratitude, I guess. Mm. Thank you, Mira. Thank you for interacting with me and appreciating. It means a lot. So, all right. Until soon. Bye.